So, Mike, what have you been doing? Are you partying and singing and having fun?
Well, I'm going to be in Sacramento September 8th. Fiona's fundraising. She calls it her group. What do you call your group, Fiona?
Karaoke caucus.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be from 6 to 8:30 or something like that, right?
Oh, really?
It usually goes 6 to 10. That's when we should leave and go home and be respectable. But they used to go to 2.
Yeah, wow. Well, I'm going to get a room across the street from Simon's. Corner there.
Yeah,
it's a really fun name for a caucus.
So I'll stay till 2.
Hello, we're going to get started. Hello, Mike, and hello, Fiona. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're going to get started, and we're recording this, and at the same time, live stream that on YouTube. Okay, we're going to start.
Okay.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Civic Leadership Forum. Your voice is your vote. Today is 2021, July 20th. This is the 3rd Silicon Valley Civic Leadership Forum in 2021. And Ding TV and CLUSA started Civic Leadership Forum Silicon Valley since 2016. And Currents become a co-organizer since 2017. We organize this forum 4 times a year. So over 2,000 students, community leaders, parents, elected officials have participated. The contents from the forum have reached to 200,000 people in Silicon Valley Bay Area and the United States. This forum provided a platform to empower the next generation in civic engagement and civic leadership in America communities, while create national network of civic-minded organizations and leaders to work together. Today is the 3rd Civic Leadership Forum, and the organizers are 8x8, Ding TV, and CLUSA. We partners with ethnic groups and different medias. So with that, I would like to thank to our partners, United National Asian Americans, and Asians Are Visible, and Silicon Valley Insider. I also want to thank AAUC, AAPI, Andy Lee, and many other community leaders for promoting this event. This event is also live streaming on YouTube right now, and also we have audience on Clubhouse. At Clubhouse, we have a club called Asian Americans Network. In 3 months, we already have over 800 members on that club. Same time, and we have Hong Yue and Sandy Wong moderating at the Clubhouse. So Hong, would you like to say hi to all the speakers and friends here? Okay.
Yes, hello everyone. So I'm speaking to you on Zoom, but I will certainly put on mute later on. Since I'm also moderating the folks on Clubhouse, and I'm going to pipe them in. If I'm constantly on Zoom and Clubhouse, there will be a lot of echo. All right. Thanks so much to the speakers and the moderators. I really appreciate this. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Han. And Han is a Vietnamese American community leader, and also we work together on Silicon Valley Central Chamber of Commerce. And we also have Sandy working on Clubhouse right now. Hi, Sandy, you there? Thank you for all the work behind the scenes. Okay, with that, I'm going to give the microphone to our co-organizer, the co-founder of 8x8, Bing Wei, to start the first panel discussion. Bing, the microphone is yours.
Okay. Thanks, Diana. We are very honored to have a very prestigious guest over here. I introduce my panel, which is former Congressman Makonda and our current State Treasurer, Fiona Ma, and our Plateau City Council member, Greg Tanaka, and our 18 years old co-founder of 8x8 Asian Voters Network, Tyler Ratcliffe. So without much ado, we're going to dive into Asian American voting issues. And as we know, we just going through the People's Act, which passed in Congress and blocking Senator. And let me share a screen of looking at the status of what Asian American voting situation in the last few years. So in California itself, we have 4 million eligible voters, and there is an increase in the last couple of years from the registration of voting. However, even that, the total AAPI share of electoral in this state is only 17%. And in 2020, there is definitely a huge turnout compared to 2016. However, Asian Americans can continue to be underrepresented, especially in the political presence as well as the electoral voting. So I want to start my first question to our panels. Let me stop sharing the screen. With the situation of Asian Americans make up 6% of our American population in the whole United States, and the registration to vote is only 17%. What's you thinking of how to encourage Asian Americans to register to vote, the best method you can look into? I'll ask Greg Tanaka first. You need to mute yourself.
Sorry, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, let me thank you for organizing this panel and for the opportunity. I think this is a really important question. Asian Americans, unfortunately, tend to be not as engaged in registering to vote or voting in general. I think that's a big problem. So this is probably one of the reasons what motivated me to start 8x8, which is basically to get 8 people to register to vote in 8 days. The idea behind 8 is it's a lucky Chinese number. So we thought that it'd be kind of a way to make people remember it. And what we're trying to do with it is most traditional voter registration programs are really about awareness, trying to get awareness, trying to get people to say, hey, you got to register to vote. This is the date. And that's the main idea behind it. With 8x8, we try to take this one step further. And it's kind of modeled after the Ice Bucket Challenge for ALS, where we're trying to use some social pressure. So people are going to use social media to call out 8 of their friends to basically register to vote in 8 days. And so you have a bit of that social pressure rather than just awareness. And then the second thing is incentivize with food, like free food. So I found that just offering just a little bit of free food does wonders in terms of motivating people. And this is literally what we did at our rally in May. So I think some of the participants like former Congressmember Honda and Fiona also participated. But we did this in a live setting. And later on, I think Tyler will talk a little bit more about what we've done in terms of trying to take this next level and automating it. But I think one of the things that we could do to move the needle from just pure awareness, which is what most voter registration programs are about, is use a bit of the social pressure plus incentives like free food to motivate Asian Americans to register to vote and to get our voter registration from like 49% to something much higher, like hopefully like 70%. And the other thing that this program does, which is nice, is that it also gives some of the Asian-owned businesses, the restaurants, a chance to also get some promotion and also supporting a good cause. But it's a very good question. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. And so Treasurer Fiona Ma, you were elected 2018 with more votes than 7 million than any other candidate for treasurer in the state's history. And you're also the first woman color and first woman CPA to be elected to the position. So what's your trick and secret sauce to get voting, not only for you, but in general? What's your thinking of the inspiration to encourage Asian Americans to vote?
Yeah, so I've been elected to 4 different offices. And my first one was really difficult, running for the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in the Sunset District, where half the district was Asian Pacific Islanders, the other half was like Irish, Italians. But trying to get our community to register and to show up was not easy. And I found, number one, getting people involved in a campaign just to volunteer. Free food is definitely how you can get volunteers to come. But on election day or before election day, because we used to have absentee ballots, right? You need to physically go and chase those ballots with your volunteers. I like to have a lot of interns, young people in my office. And so they would actually be assigned to make sure, you know, their parents, their grandparents, the uncles and aunts submit their ballots during election time. And I can tell you that sometimes my brother and sister-in-law didn't vote for me because I would call them and I would say, I hope you're voting. And they would say, yes, 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 I'm voting, you know, on election day. And then it comes to 8 o'clock at night and they said, oh, I got stuck at work, or, oh, I was cooking dinner and I had to help the kids, the girls with homework. I'm sorry, I didn't vote. So even my own family, when I'm on the ballot, sometimes doesn't vote. So you need to go and look people in the eye, go and knock on their door, shake their hand and ask them to please commit to voting. And if they commit to voting 9 out of 10 times, I think they are actually gonna go and commit to, you know, and go and vote on election day. But it is not easy and you have to keep reminding and sometimes you have to chase ballots.
That's great tip and also a lot of effort. So Honorable Congressman Mark Honda, you were not only representing California 15 and 17 districts from 2001 to 2017, and also during that time, you were also elected as the vice chairman of the Democrat National Convention. So as a godfather for Asian American politician, what's your message for the methods of encouraging Asian American registrants to vote?
Well, first of all, don't believe your own legend. That's one thing. 2, always remember that there was always someone that's helped you along the way and tried to figure out how you can replicate that help with other people and constantly being on the lookout for recruiting. For instance, San Jose, we want city council people to run. You know, there's a woman by the name of Tamiko Rosk, who's very active, but doesn't want to run. And we just have to pull people together to work with them and convince them that, you know, they will get a lot of support from the community. You mentioned that there was 4 million eligible voters in California who are Asian Americans, and you said 17% of them are registered to vote. But there's a lot of other questions we have to ask ourselves when we look at statistics. You know, who are these folks that are not registered to vote, who are eligible? What languages are they? Because Asian Americans we're over 22 groups. So we need to look at recruitment based upon what's best and how they best communicate within our community. For instance, the Cambodians, a lot of them don't look at written things, it's word of mouth. And you have to find a person in that community that's, you know, the person that they look to communicate within themselves. So we have a lot of work within our own diasporas to figure out how we're going to be able to communicate with them and then get them to feel like their voices count and their votes count. Language access, you know, we got laws that says it has to be a certain percentage before you can put it in a language in the on the ballots. But we have social media, and we could put up kiosks where folks can go to look at something in the language they understand and the issues that they understand, so that they can vote. We're not taking full advantage of the technology out there in order to communicate and tell people, we need your vote, we think you're important, and just touching them in the way that they understand and they respond to most positively.
Yeah, I really totally agree. The language access for the diaspora community, which is a huge element. We have an increase of over 50% in California of foreign-born immigrants in the last few years. And however, with the total population 23 million in the United States of AAPI community, we only have 3% of National Congress who are Asians. And in California itself, 7% presented in the state political office. So want to see what are your thoughts on increasing both our voting ratio, especially our political representation? Maybe our treasurer, Fiona Ma, can take lead on discussing that.
Before I do, I was just going to add to Mike Honda's comments. I remember when I first ran, I would carry an accordion envelope, and I would have my message, my bio, my message in different languages. It would be in Chinese, Russian, Tagalog, Japanese, Korean. And like Mike said, we're a big community. And when you give something to a person in their native language, especially if English is not their first language, they are so excited that you have taken that extra effort. And it's amazing because they will go back to their family and friends or church members and start talking about you. So again, you have to be able to communicate in a language that they're most comfortable with.
Yeah,
I think we were talking about Congress. Did you ask me about Congress?
Just general, both Congress and the state's political office, where we are very underrepresented. And we're very glad you're there.
Yeah, so again, like Mike said, there are members of our community who are leaders who we would like to encourage them to run, but some of them just don't know how to do it. They're nervous, they're scared. There's a lot of, rumors, innuendos about running for office. So I would say, number one, go get into one of these training programs. There are a lot of training programs out there for people who are thinking about running. Sometimes they're boot camp, sometimes they're a little bit longer. So try to enroll in as many as you can. I would also try to get appointed to a local or state board or commission. That's where you actually learn about Robert's Rules of Order and the Sunshine Act and Brown Act, all the important rules that you need to know if you're going to be an elected official. And then third, I would definitely intern for an elected official or volunteer on campaigns. It is so essential that if you want to run for office, you need to know how to campaign, and you need to know how to get volunteers, right? Hire your right consultant, speak to the media. And those are some of the things that you can learn working on a campaign. And then working in an elected official's office is more about policy, right? If you're interested in a certain area, that is a great way to dip your feet into, what your platform is going to be, what you're going to advocate for, where you can be an expert so that others will look to your leadership when you get elected or you're running for office.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very inspirational, educational. What do you think, Congressman Honda, to the methods to increase our Asian American political representation?
Well, I think all the Asian American population, they all have their own organizations, correct? And so organizing it's not a new thing. We just got to convince them that how they organize in their own diaspora is no different than in any other. They just have to have that confidence, and we have to sort of, like Fiona said, expose them to arenas where they can get exposure to other things, but also practice leadership. Just because a person is president of an organization does not make that person a thought leader. And just because a person says, I want to run for office, does not mean that they deserve Asian votes. They should be held to some sort of value system that we believe in, like affirmative action, social justice, criminal justice, those kinds of things where we have certain kinds of grills that we sort of sift people through our process of selecting and recruiting. And looking for young people, there's a lot of young people out there that have the burning desire to serve. And like Fiona said, we should put them into offices of elected office, but they be placed not to collect paper clips and move papers around, but to be exposed to different aspects of the office and why that office is important, and to be given responsibility in that office so that they understand that they too can have those skills to be able to do that. Putting people in office to just be there and being present, and make the parents feel good that, you know, my kid's there, but it's to no avail. It's no value if we don't take their time and their presence and put them into reasonable and meaningful activities. So yeah, we have that responsibility for the young people, and we have also to see our community not as a community that doesn't have any organization. They all have ways of organizing themselves and running their organization, and those skills are usable in politics and policymaking. And we just gotta encourage these folks to understand that and then practice it, and then make sure that we expose them to a value system that I think is important, and that's our constitutional integrity.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, Congressman Greg Tanaka, you've been running for Palo Congress for 2 terms. This is second term, and you're running, for the National Congress 2022, and also you are guiding and mentoring over 20 interns for this summer. And what your thoughts are mentoring more Asian American political candidates or increasing our own political representation? You need to unmute.
I keep forgetting. Okay, yeah. So one of the big reasons why I have my internship program for my city council member office is because I want to encourage the next generation. We want to build a pipeline. So a lot of, like, for me, if I look at myself when I was in high school, I was very much a STEM kid, very much engineering, science, math kind of kid, and I didn't do student government. I wasn't really terribly involved, and I think really, I think what's important is to expose Asian Americans to this other side, right? To the more civic engagement area. And for me, I've probably at this point in time, I've had probably maybe 70, 80 interns through my program. And one thing that makes me really happy is that a lot of them actually, after going through my program, they're like, hey, I'm gonna be a poli-sci major, or I'm gonna run for elected office one day, right? And to me, I'm really proud of that, because I know, like, when I was in high school, I certainly wasn't thinking that. I might be, if you read my yearbook, might be the guy most likely not to run for political office. And so to me, it's giving those opportunities so that people can see what it's like, the kind of change you could have, and also to see that there's someone that looks like them actually in office. I think that's really important. I think it's very important to have role models. And I think Asian Americans have done extremely well in many areas like law and medicine, engineering. But in terms of politics, we are really lagging compared to most other ethnicities. I remember when I talked to my dad about running for Palo City Council in 2016. And most offices, you have to raise money, right? So I hit my dad for money. He donated to Obama's campaign and Hillary's campaign. I asked him to donate to my campaign. And my dad was like, no, I'm not going to donate to your campaign. He told me he didn't think Asians should be in politics. He thought that we should keep our heads down, our mouths shut. His attitude was like the nail that sticks up gets nailed down. And I'm like, God, what a bad attitude, right? He just incredibly unsupportive, right? He felt like we were guests in this country. And like, my great grandfather came here from Hiroshima in 1880. So we've been here for over 100 years. And, if we're guests in this country, I mean, to me, I was kind of floored by his kind of mentality. And when I told him that I was going to run for U.S. Congress, he told me, Greg, if you're going to stay, if you're going to run, stay in politics, you got to move to Hawaii because Asians aren't liked in California. Like this really incredible, even though like given the stat you talked about in terms of what percentage of Asians are in California, what percentage like in Santa Clara County, Asians are 38% of the population. We're actually the largest ethnicity in the county, and so I think these kind of thinking has to change, right? And I think this thinking can be changed by giving people opportunities. So I want to encourage my fellow elected officials to give opportunities, internships, chief of staff, right? Opportunities for Asian Americans to get involved in politics. And I've seen the change that can happen when you do this for people. So I think it's really important that we give these opportunities, especially as Asian Americans in office, to others, so that the next generation will maybe follow in our footsteps and perhaps even go further than us.
Fiona, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, can I just add?
Absolutely.
I was like Greg. My parents did not encourage me to run for student body president. They just wanted me to get straight A's, and I played an instrument. I played the flute and the percussions, and I excelled in sports. So I played 4 sports in junior high and high school. And it really wasn't until I was 28 years old when I became president of the Asian Business Association that I started to understand how important it is to be at the table, that people are making decisions, that they don't look like us, they don't think like us, they don't think about us, unless we are at the table, both for policy and for funding. And so that's when I started. And like Greg, I've had 1,000 interns now come through my office. And like Mike says, a lot of the parents want their kids to intern in the office, to put their, that on their resume. But what we do is we actually try to change their hearts and minds and talk to them about the value of public service, that it is an honorable profession. And even my dad and mom, when I ran for supervisor, they were like, why are you giving up your accounting career? When I ran for the state assembly, they also said, why do you keep running for office? You're not making money. Go back and be an accountant. And then I ran for the Board of Equalization, and that was a tax board, so they were a little bit happier. And now as the treasurer of California, my parents actually are finally proud because they understand that role. So like Greg said, his father is like, oh, well, why are you doing that? But if Greg gets elected, I'm sure his dad's going to be very, very proud. But I do think our parents are nervous for us. They don't want us to put ourselves out there, to be negatively viewed, to get hurt. And ultimately, I think our parents don't understand how to support us, Greg. They want to, give advice, right? But they've never done it before. So their backup is, oh, maybe you shouldn't try it because you could lose, or, it may be too hard for you. So you should go back and do what you know how to do, which is what they want us to do ultimately, right? So I think, trying to get your parents' support is very, it was a struggle for me. It took 8 years for me to run for office. And that's because my parents finally gave up and moved to Las Vegas. But I also was always looking for my parents to give me the approval to run for office.
Yeah, role model is essential in any profession you go into, right? So we have a great role model here, Honorable Congressman Honda. So what was your inspiration when you were running for office? At that time, there's very rare any Asian politicians around. Did you get your parents' support, or you just, determined you're going to do this yourself?
Well, my dad just wanted me to be a doctor so I could buy a nice big home and go 3 days a week, But But I think a comment to our parents, though, they experience a certain personal history, so they're responding to that. And so in my mind, I see them as being selfish for us in wanting us to be successful as they had dreamed to be successful. So given that, I think that we just have to understand that they're being selfish for us, wanting the best, but then our job is to sort of, move on beyond that. And so, Greg, your father did a terrible job raising you, but he did a wonderful job in giving you and Fiona the perception that there's something else that needs to be addressed. And if we forget who we are, where we came from, in our history in this country, we're doomed to be just white. Okay? White folks have gone through the same thing we have gone through. They've been discriminated against, they've been put down, but as they moved through the generations, they blended in and became part of the mainstream. And so they forgot that they fought for religious freedom, they fought for bilingual education, they fought for recognition of their culture and everything else like that. But on the East Coast, they forgot all that. We're more recent, so it's very new to us. It's still fresh, so we should not forget all that stuff and not set aside, but to take who we are and make it part of the American way of thinking and being. We don't have to be white to be heard. We don't have to be white to lead, and we don't have to be boisterous and loud in order to be heard. It's just that we have our certain ways. And with Fiona, I know that she takes every position that she's had and taught people about what it is to be Board of Equalization, Control and Treasure, because a lot of people don't know what that is. And she's taking time to teach the Asian American community how important those things are and how to take advantage of it. So we have to remember who we are, where we come from, and not be ashamed of our language, but see it as a plus, because rich folks in the old days used to send their kids to Europe to learn French, German. Why? Because they knew it was important. And in this country, we diminish the language and make everybody speak English so they'll be Americans. No, if you got Mandarin or Cantonese or other languages, you become doubly powerful in terms, no matter what work you engage in. And so we have to, reconfigure what it is that we want our kids to be able to become as they go through public education, and not become assimilated, but become acculturated. And we want this country to, take on our characteristics, because it's worked for us.
Yeah, totally agree. How to make it work for us. So, Treasurer of State Treasurer Fiona Ma, so what inspired you to run for office so many times, and what keeps on going? So our event is actually following your slogan, "Your vote is your voice." So how did it keep you going? You have, no support from parents until quite recent. I'd be interested to hear your story.
Yeah, so like I said, it took 8 years for me to run for my first office. And because it took so long, I was hungry when I got the opportunity to run for the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in the Sunset District, which was the Chinese seat back then. And I ran. There were 7 other candidates in the race, but I felt like I worked harder because, number one, I don't want my parents to say I told you so. Number 2, I didn't want to go back and be an accountant anymore. And that's kind of been the themes for all of my races. And sometimes doors open up for you. Sometimes you have an open seat. Sometimes you're running against an incumbent, which is difficult. Sometimes it's a little luck and timing. But if this is something that is your calling, like Congressman Mike Honda, myself, and Greg, we have a long-term view of it, and we're going to be patient, and we're going to look for those opportunities to serve. if we can. And an elected office, it's like musical chairs. You hope when the music stops, you have a chair. If not, sometimes you have to wait for the next round. But that's kind of what we do, and just opportunities have opened up to run for the next level up. And every experience is a gift. I'm excited and I love every job I'm in. And every time someone says, well, if you love that job, you should try this job. And then I try that job and I love that job as well. So I just think getting as much experience as you can whenever you can. And honestly, to find mentors like Congressman Mike Honda. He's been supporting me and mentoring me and showing up at all of my events since my first race. And so you also need people in your corner, not only to legitimize your race, but also to show you how to do it, what the pathway is, what the barriers are going to be, how to overcome, some of these obstacles. And so it's important to find mentors as well.
That's a very good
I
point.
only stuck with her because I was afraid of her.
Fierce Fiona Ma. Keep on going, never stop.
There's an aspect to our experience that we need to talk about also, and that's the alliances that we built up outside of our own group, because Asians cannot elect Asians alone. And so, I've watched Fiona work with her other boss, John Burton, and that man was a powerful man in the state of California. She earned his respect and she earned his support because he knew the kind of work that she could do, in spite of the fact that she looked different, had a different background. But the Burtons was able to give her their influence also, and she wielded it in a very astute way. And so building coalitions among other communities is going to be important. And being true to the common values that we have and the common goals that we have is important. And we need to be not afraid of engaging our community, but not afraid to also develop coalitions with other communities and learn their ways and their language.
Yes, indeed. The Asian community itself is very diverse, has a lot of different communities and a lot of different languages. Like Councilmember Tanaka is half Chinese, half Japanese. And so question to you, come back to you. You've been evolving as a civic leader through the Stop Asian Hate movements and sparking a new movement calling for Asian Americans to vote by starting the 8x8 initiative. What you hope to see the Asian turnout in the next few years, and especially with the increasing turnout after the AAPI movement? You need to mute, unmute.
Yeah, sorry, I switched my computer, so I don't see the mute. Anyways, yeah, so Bing, thank you for the question. I think this is a good question. One community I really admire is the Jewish community, and I admire the Jewish community because even though I think they're a smaller percentage of the population than Asian Americans, but they really have a lot of unity. They actually have quite a bit of political power, and they're very effective. And I look at that community, and even though they're smaller than the Asian American community in the United States, they have incredible influence on the politics, right? And I look at how they are organized, and I would love to see the Asian American community to be as organized, to get as involved, to run for office, to hold office as the Jewish community. That's what I like to see. I think there's a lot of parallels. I think Jewish community is also very educated as are most Asian Americans. And a lot of Asian Americans have been very successful as in the Jewish community, but we don't have the same level of political involvement from running for office, from donating, to what Fiona was talking about earlier in terms of participating in political campaigns. I think we don't have that kind of pattern in our community yet. And that's something which I would love for us to get there, right? So it starts with registering to vote, but it has to go all the way through political office. Otherwise, like you said, we're going to only have, 3% Asian Americans in Congress, even though the population may be 6-7%, right?
Mhm.
And so I think in order to get proper representation, I think we have to be more unified than we are. But it's hard, right? Because Asia is, a very, if you look at it from the global perspective of the 8 billion people on Earth, it's like it's a huge label. It covers so many different continents, right? And subcontinents. And so it's a really broad label for lots of different people. But I'm hoping that, if we look at all the darkness that's happened with all the Asian hate over the past few years, and what I'm hoping is that the silver lining is going to be that there's some rallying behind being Asian in the United States, right? In terms of trying to combat racism against Asians, in terms of trying to, have effective laws that stop Asian hate. Because I know there's a lot of Asian hate reported, but very little of it is actually prosecuted. I remember when I saw the spokesperson in Atlanta talk about how the 6 Asian American women got killed, and it's just, the guy was having a bad day type of attitude, and just made me think about how that guy could say that and get away with it, because probably none of his superiors are Asian, right? Probably in Atlanta, Georgia, there's probably not that many Asian Americans, and probably he didn't have to answer to them, right? There's no voice, there's no political power for Asian Americans. But if you look at the same thing for the Jewish community, they are very effective, very organized. And so I think there's a lot we can learn from the Jewish community in terms of how do we get to that level of organization. But although it is harder, because Asians are not a religion like it is for the Jewish community, but we have had moments of things that can kind of rally us from the Asian hate recently, to even back during World War II, when all the Japanese Americans, 120,000 Japanese Americans got put into concentration camps, or the Chinese Exclusion Act. So we've had these moments, but we haven't really capitalized on it. And I'm hoping that we can, I'm hoping some of the good that will come out of all the bad that has happened is that we'll be more unified, more organized, and actually start flexing some of our political muscle, right? Or start developing that political muscle, because I think Asian Americans, we are just as qualified as anyone else. We're just as educated. In fact, we're probably more educated than most other ethnicities. We work crazy hard, right? I think we're as smart as others. Yet, we never get our time in the sun, right? We're viewed it by some other ethnicities as the ATM, right? We're viewed as the carpet to kind of walk on, right? We're like the punching bag. And so why is that? Why don't we have representation? Why do we have to defer to others? Right? Why is it not our time to be leaders, right? To have representation. And so I think our time, I think we should do less of deferring to others and more stepping up, because I see other ethnicities step up who are probably less qualified than a lot of Asian Americans, and yet Asian Americans don't step up. So I'm hoping that we can see a change with this.
Yeah, I agree. I think the confidence to start up and the importance of unity is essential. And horizontally, we need to unify different diversity of minorities, but also on the vertical level, the youth in the election of 2020 has a turnout reached an all-time high of over 50%. And so we have a youth co-founder, Tyler here, 18-year-old, co-founded the 8x8 Asian Voters Network. Wanted Tyler to share your thoughts about the importance of youth register to vote and the app you're developing to help young people to register vote faster and easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bing. Great to be here with everyone. I think for me, from my perspective, the thing that makes youth registration really important, besides the obvious goal of we want as many people of all ages to register to vote as possible, is that when you're, say, 16 years old, which is when in California you become eligible to pre-register, it's that time when habits are being formed. And it's those habits that more often than not are what's going to stick with you into your adult life. So if you can start voting by 18, start pre-registering at 16, you're probably going to keep voting in the future. And on top of that, voter registration is really just the first step in the process of getting involved politically. So if you get that done when you're young, it's more likely that you're going to volunteer on a campaign, or join an organization, or even run for office yourself. And that's the kind of political activity that we're ultimately looking to see. And the kind of exposure that you're able to get through, the office, the internships that Greg offers or that Fiona offers. And then in terms of what we're actually doing to encourage that, I think what's really important to remember, and this is something that applies not only just to youth, but to all age groups, is that young people may have their own set of motivations for registering or not registering to vote. And because of that, what we really need to do is tailor solutions to fit those needs. So going back to your question about the 8x8 app that we're working on, one thing we're trying to do with that is use social media and social pressure to specifically target people who are under 30, with the goal of starting to build those lifelong voting habits as early on as we can, and to use specific solutions for each age group. And none of these solutions are going to be one size fits all, but that's exactly why we want to engage our youth voters in the process of creating them, because it's only really through getting the input of people in those age groups that we're going to be able to develop solutions that work for them.
Yeah, fantastic answer. Yeah, I'm also hoping that particular app can have multi-language function too. So it's easy to press the button and then follow the instruction. So now we open the panel to the audience to see anybody have any questions in the next 15 minutes before the second panel come on board. So you can raise your hand or type your questions into the chat, which is probably easier to see.
And maybe while we're waiting, Bing, I have a couple things just to add to the other speakers. So I know that the three main panelists were all elected officials, but there are other roles for people to participate if they don't want to run for office, because like my chief of staff, she does not want to be in elected office. She likes being, behind the scenes, making things happen. And if you have a gift, like you're good at websites or filming or photography, I mean, all of these skills can be effective and for elected officials or on campaigns. So, you can contribute whatever your talent is. Also, if you are thinking about running for office, like Tyler said, you can register or prepare at 16, register at 18. And Mike and Greg and I know our opponents always want to track whether we voted for the last 10 elections. So, if you're going to have a spotty track record of voting and then all of a sudden you decide you want to run for a big office, yet you haven't really voted consistently, your credibility is not really going to be as strong. And then third, Tyler talked about social media. Be careful what you put on social media, because what you put on social media never goes away. So if you're going to run for office someday, people are going to find things that you have posted. So stay positive, right? You can be creative, but really just try to stay positive, because that will help you in the long run.
Yeah, these are great tips, and also different roles everybody can play to get more involved, especially what Greg said, it is our time now, and we should have the confidence to step up and to look into different aspects of involvement, whether being an intern and whether being the chief staff, like Fiona said, and also Mike being a mentor, which is so valuable to all the upcoming new generations of Asian politicians. So we can take question now. You can raise your hand or type your questions in the chat group. We are very quiet Asian audience and no questions.
Let me make a comment while we're still waiting.
Okay.
I'll take advantage of it as Fiona did. If we look at politics right now, you have to ask yourself, why are the Republicans trying to suppress our votes? And the answer is because they realize they're becoming less of a population in this country, and that the minority populations become the majority. But the majority is not going to be able to wield any influence unless we vote and understand the power of the vote and make sure that that's what they're trying to take away from us. And you got to ask yourself why, because they realize that if we exercised our vote, we would run this country. And as a collective population, if we know how to work among ourselves, then we can really take this country in the right direction. So the Latinos a few years ago says, tu voz es tu voto. Your voice is your vote, like Fiona is saying. And this comparison to the Jewish folks, we have to be careful about that also. You know, the Jewish faith, because if you look at it, it's their faith. It's not their nationality, because they run the whole gamut, right? Just like Islam and Christianity, Buddhism, they're all of different ethnic backgrounds. And so you have to ask yourself, what was it about the Jewish experience that made them influential in this country? Is because they were persecuted. They were persecuted. And they were persecuted in Europe, and there was no political will to support them. So in this country, they made Israel important. And anybody who was anti-Israel was anti-them. But now, you know, the APACs and the different Jewish groups are splintering in the sense that it's more mature. They're becoming a lot less hooked to the Jewish politics, because I didn't really like Netanyahu. He was right of center. But what we have to understand is that what made the Japanese American active was being in camp. Well, we're 2 generations away from it, and we don't have that fear. But we should have that fear in this country for Asian Americans as a collective population, because the way our government treats Asia, if we don't see them treating Asia with respect, we can't expect them to treat us with respect.
Yeah, that's very true.
And so anytime our country goes off and you know, blaming Asia for this, that, and the other, we have to speak up and say that's not right. That doesn't mean the Asian countries are perfect, but going after them, they're coming after us. Save the whales turned out to be Japanese. Go back where you came from.
Mm.
The motor industry, they killed Vincent Chen.
Yeah.
They thought he was Japanese. And so it doesn't matter in this country what Asian group we belong to. We better understand how we're looked at by our own government and the power structure that looks at us.
Yeah.
And so Fiona's right. It's about being hungry and about having power, but having the power to demonstrate who we are rather than to demonstrate our power in ways that, you know, is non-productive.
Yeah.
And so I think if we understand that dynamics in our government, how they treat Asia, and then how they treat us, because let's face it, Biden has not selected a lot of Asian Americans in his administration. It's only after time he said, "You're not going to get my cooperation until you put somebody, more people who look like us."
Yeah.
If you want your administration to look like America, then there better be some more Asian faces there.
I agree. Even in the foreign offices, you know, a lot of them, you know, Singapore ambassador never Asian, so white male. So this is not really a proper representation what America looks like. So we have a question for you, Mike, from our audience. What is your lesson learned in your political experience? I give 2 best lessons.
Probably one is don't hesitate to do the right thing. I regret 2 things. I regretted not walking out with the Black Caucus and Patsy Mink when Florida took the presidential election and the Supreme Court overstepped their boundaries and gave the presidency to Bush and not to Gore. And walking out in protest, I should have done it. I didn't know enough information, and I wasn't connected enough at that point because it was my first few months. But if I saw Patsy Minko, I should have gone with her. The second is, Barbara Lee was right on the vote on the war on terrorism. I thought that we had developed the wording precisely enough to attack folks who did the 9/11, but she saw the terminology still too broad, and I didn't see it. And she was the only one that voted no on the war on terrorism. And now today we still have a declaration of war against terrorism, and we don't know what country they come from. So now the president can use the Alien Enemy Act of 1798 to incarcerate, deport, detain anybody based upon their own sentiment and reconstruct the concentration camps that the Japanese Americans had done it solely because they have that power. And so we just have to be able to act on what we believe on and bear the consequences, because over time we will be proven right that we did the right thing or we said the right thing.
Mm-hmm. That's a great lesson to share. Do you, similar to Fiona and Greg, do you guys have great lessons to share in your political experience?
Yeah, I would say I learned from my mentor, John Burton. He would always say, remember who brought you to the dance, darling. Meaning, have some sort of loyalty, okay, to the people who got you there, and don't, look for shiny new objects and forget about all your friends and supporters who helped you at the very beginning. Second, he would say, stand up for those who don't have a voice.
Right.
And the third, like Barbara Lee, stand up even if you are the only person standing up. So I think those are very good things I've learned from John Burton.
It's a lot of courage to stand up when you're only one who's standing up. What's your lesson, Greg, so far?
Yeah, I like the one about stand up even if you're the only one. I think it's really important to stand up for what's right, even if you're the minority. I remember last summer on city council, my colleagues were looking at racism against Black and brown people, and we're seeing this rise in Asian hate crimes. And I asked my colleagues to also include in their looking at racism against Asian Americans, because I've been hearing from my constituents that they're getting there's a pretty big increase in these kind of hate crimes, and my pretty much nobody else would back me. I was the only one no one else would back my motion to also add in racism against Asian Americans, even though Asian Americans in Palo Alto are 33% of the population.
Yes.
So I think it's important to stand up for what's right, even if you're the only one. The other thing I learned, and something which I think probably Mike and Fiona could probably talk about, is really to listen to all sides. I know a lot of times it's difficult to hear or to listen to people that disagree with you. But one of the things I found that is really informative is to hear the other opinion, even one that, in fact, I learn more from people I disagree with, because they usually are able to poke holes in my thinking. So I'm able to get stronger thinking. And it's one of the reasons why I hold office hours every Sundays, because I want to hear all sides. And so that's the other thing to think about is to actually engage. We're supposed to be representative of the people, but to really represent the people, we have to understand what they think. And only way to understand what people think is to listen to all different sides, right? So if you're a Democrat, listen to a Republican, and vice versa, right? Listen to people, to perspectives that aren't necessarily your perspectives. And so when I hold office hours, I actually and Tyler could talk about this. We kind of go out of our way to invite people from different sides to be in that meeting, to have that debate, because that's how you get to the truth, right? If you're in an echo chamber, you're only listening to yourself, you only listen to things that you agree with, you get very distorted perspectives. And I think that's part of what's the problem right now with politics, right? In general, especially at the higher level, is that there's a lot of partisanship. But sometimes there's a good idea that comes from a Democrat that Republicans should listen to. And sometimes there's a good idea from a Republican that a Democrat should listen to. And so not everything is bad because it comes from opposite sides of the aisle. And so I try to be a really good listener and really try to hear all different perspectives. And I hope other politicians would do this as well, because I think it's important. What's important is to move ahead, to get society moving forward, no matter whose idea it was, and less to, oh, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, or you voted for Trump, or you voted for Biden. I think we need to get past that, because we're in this tremendous gridlock right now.
Yeah.
And it's not good for anyone. So I think really what we should do is we look at what's best overall, the greatest good, and look for the best ideas, no matter who came up with it and what side's supporting it. And so I hope more politicians will do this, because I think that's what's needed to move our country forward.
Yeah, absolutely. With the country so divided, the unity is really the message, and looking to different people's perspective. So thanks so much for all the panels. I'm very privileged to moderate this panel. And now our time's up for the next panel. Thanks, Mike, Fiona, Greg, and Tyler. So you guys welcome to stay on the next panel. I will be, and then Greg has another engagement to move on to his next event. Thanks so much. I'm very grateful, Mike, Fiona, Greg, to be on the panel, and Tyler to join us too. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you. Did.
Thank you, Bing. Can you hear me, everyone? Good. Yes, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Fiona. And we just had a wonderful panel discussion, how to let your voice be heard. And thanks to our honorable guest, Fiona Ma, California State Treasurer, Mike Honda, former Congressman, Greg Tanaka, Palo City Council member, and Bing Wei, co-founder of 8x8 and youth leader, Tyler. I also want to thank to all the audience today. You're welcome to interact and join the discussion with speakers by typing your questions and comments in the chat. And our moderators will bring your questions to the speaker. You can also raise up your hand and we will unmute you and invite you to talk later on. So now we are presenting this event on both Zoom and Clubhouse. At the same time, live stream on Ding TV YouTube channel, which has 8,000 subscribers. So friends on Clubhouse are welcome to join us on Zoom by enter the Zoom meeting ID 834-6428-6646. I totally agree with Greg, and we all need a role model and a mentor. So next, I would like to invite my mentor and role model, Mr. Sandy Chau, Asian American pioneer, entrepreneur, and investor who has inspired many civic leaders. He's also the founder and president of Civic Leadership USA to give us a short speech before we come to the next panel. So Ms. Sandy Chau, you're there, and microphone is yours.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so humbled by so many good ideas and then be communicated. And then I was so happy to see Fiona Moore and Mike Honda's hi, and then and so many friends among us. And then I would say you are truly inspiring me so much. I would say basically when we were talking about vote, I would say the hardest thing for us is this every registered vote is so difficult, and then costs a lot of effort whatsoever. So therefore, basically, I would say whenever we have is get people to register. If you're not registered, I think the Asian Americans are very low in terms of registration rate. And then the continuous like today, and then we're talking about voter registration, that what next is voter education. I would say a lot of times, I think this is really a wonderful panel talk about we need to be educated, why we vote, what is the what we have to know, and then what kind of stand, what kind of need that we have, and what kind of issue that we're facing. And then we need that kind of conviction, and that's what Mike mentioned about is us. When people don't care and then they have empathy, that is really the killer of us not able to make any stand and any voice among us. So therefore, what next is actually you have to register, you have to be educated, and then you have to participate. And then participate in a certain situation, I would say the Asians need, I think later on we'll talk about unity. We have to be certain common cause and they will stand together. There's certain value because the Asians are ignored during the past. And then the first thing that we need to do is unite it together. And then at least we have to be above the water and able to breathe. And then we're able to breathe, we can do something. So therefore, I would say we have some pioneer, but not enough. We have Mike, and then we have so many other people already in Congress, but somehow it's still not representative because in order to represent all the Asians, right now we ought to have at least 30 Congress person in the Congress. So therefore, we're very much behind. So therefore, in such a case, I think I can see all the enthusiasm today, and then we just need the urgency for it. And then what I think is this, among the Asian Americans, we still need some kind of common cause and common value. As Grace said, it's the Asian Americans are really qualified, sometimes even overqualified, because we are the most educated group, we're the most concerned group, we are the most informed group. And then these are the power. I think I can see just the participants of today and what the intelligence is being communicated. We just need to harness all the power and then all the unity, and then to get our voice over, because it will make a difference. Because I understand that this year we were able to the Senate is 50-50 in the Atlanta, in the Georgia Senate's runoff. The total Asian vote is about 2.6% to 2.7%. And then the 1.7% voted for the new senator in, and only 1% of Asian vote otherwise. So therefore, basically, the Senate is won by much less than 0.7%, but the Asian overwhelming voting, and then make all the difference in the Senate balance. So therefore, basically all that, it just shows that our vote matters. So therefore, basically, I would say it takes many, many little steps to move forward. And rather than one incident, I think we should get 1 and 2 and 3. But in order to do that means that not only we need to vote, we need to have some unity for common cause. And another thing is this, I think what our congressman and then the city council and then supervisor for county and then assembly and the center for the state, I think is this, our voice should count. But somehow, in order to make the total influence, I would say the Asian Americans in certain groups were too much isolated. So therefore, basically, we need to reach out. We need to reach out all the other ethnic group, the mainstream, the Latino, the Blacks, and then we should have in such way, unless we have a lot of positive impact of them, and then they feel we're so important, they really support us, that the Asian really can suffice. So therefore, basically, listening to today, I just feel so much encouraged, and I really felt that the energy, that I really feel energized, and then I can see, because all this gathering just give me hope, and I really thank you for leading this charge, and then just seeing the charge give me a lot of goosebumps, and then I just feel energized. I'm so happy to be with this group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sandy Chau. At this moment, I would like to suggest all of us to turn on the camera, and we're going to have a group picture together. before our guests leave, and turn on the camera. Let's take a picture together. Yes, I see. Okay. Xiaoyan, oh, so many friends here. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. I'll look at the screen and let's take a picture together. Yok, Lising, Stefan, Manoj, Lily, Walter, Julia, you there? Please turn on your camera. Yes. May, yes, I saw you. Thank you. Yes, Lising is the first one to get on the Zoom. Thank you so much for being with us. Yeah, Fang La, it's good to see you. Haven't seen you for a long time. Okay, let's take a picture together. Okay, Lily, good to see you. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, yes. Okay, thank you so much. Yes, let's continue our discussion. So good to see all of you. Let me change the Zoom to the speaker. Yes. Okay. And also would like to thank for this team for putting this together. Bing, Tyler, Sandy, Hong. Yes, we have a great team putting this together. I really like what Mr. Mike Honda just said. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't have to be white to be heard. You don't have to speak perfect English to be heard. But how to get our AAPI vote be counted? What's the barriers to AAPI unity? And how to make our voice be heard, make every AAPI vote counted. Next, I would like to invite the moderator, my friend Keith Koo. Keith is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, investor, and Chinese American radio host. And Keith is going to be the moderator for next panel discussion with speaker Joe Wong, Anthony Ng, and Seto Wong. And thanks to all the speakers to join us. Keith, microphone is yours. Yeah, Keith, you hear me? Please unmute yourself.
Thanks, Diana. I want to thank you and the team, Sandy and Hong, again, for putting this really important discussion together. Of course, the previous panel, I do want to recognize Sandy and the powerful speech she just gave. So thanks for the opportunity. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to have a panel discussion on making every AAPI vote count. And then we'll have about a 30-minute Q&A, and then Diana and team will wrap up. So as Diana mentioned, I'm Keith Koo. Some of the things that have not been mentioned yet is I have a radio show called Silicon Valley Insider. I started it 4 years ago, literally because there were no Asian radio hosts on the business network here in Silicon Valley. And when I did the show, I said I would do a show and I would happen to be Asian, but it wouldn't be an Asian show. But 2/3 of my guests are women minorities. It's important to mention this because of innovation that happens. The general assumption in Silicon Valley is what's called a blue flame, which are two white males in their late 20s who have no family life, just work, or one white male or one Asian male as the partners. And so before that, I was climbing the corporate ladder. I was an executive in several companies, and I've been on the board of the Asian Business League for over a decade, and I've been tracking a lot of this data around Asians in the workforce and Asians in leadership. Before I begin, one of the interesting comments also is that the population in the United States is 6.5% Asian, but it's 2/3 are foreign born, only 1/3 are American born. So unless you're naturalized, voting becomes even more problematic. And also for US Census purposes, as Diana's mentioned, there are actually over 48 countries on the continent of Asia, and then you include the territories, well, disputed, and again, I'm not making a political statement here, but Taiwan, Macau, and Hong Kong, there's 51 different regions in the continent of Asia. Becomes a very, very polarizing place. And we do want to do, as Sandy said, bring unity. For US Census purposes, only South Asians, East Asians, and Southeast Asians are considered Asian. Western and Central Asians are actually Caucasian or white for US Census purposes. So this is where it becomes a very, very complicated question. And that's how I want to start off opening up with the panel. I'd like each of the panelists to do a brief introduction, starting with Sato. And please turn on your cameras and your microphones if you're on the panel.
Hello, can you hear me?
We
Hello?
can.
Okay, yes. I'm having a little issues, but I'll just start. I'm Sato. I live here in the SF Bay area. My background is in branding and strategy, working in tech to help companies get their messaging and their branding out there. Now, why do I share this? I'm sharing this because it is the reason why I started Asians Are Visible. I started Asians Are Visible at the height of the attacks against the community sometime in February. And because of my background, knowing how important words are and how powerful words could be, I was so alarmed when I saw like so many negative words like hate, right next to the Asian. And for me, as someone who creates messaging and a story using words, it took me back to history, learning about history, how negative words were used to turn people against each other. And I really did not want that to happen to our community, to have the word hate or any negative words attached to the word Asians, right? Because it can become a symbol for the Asian community. And so that's how Asian Are Visible came to be, and also to address the visibility of Asians. And I believe Mike Honda shared earlier about Vincent Chan, right? How people took the word Japanese and they associated with a face, right? Which looked Asian. And they used that as an excuse to kill a man. And this also happened during the Japanese encampment. So I think at this point where we are, although I think it's good that we reacted at the beginning because something powerful needed to happen, I think right now we need to start thinking of the narrative that we're going to create for our community that is more positive, that will move us forward into the future. So yeah, with Asians Are Visible.
Thanks, Sato. Thank you for the introduction. And I totally agree that part of the way of building allyship is to use more positive language so that people don't anchor on negative language like hate. I want to actually move over to Anthony, Executive Director of Civic Leadership USA. Anthony, please give an intro to yourself. Anthony, you're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Keith. I'm Anthony Ain, Executive Director of Civic Leadership USA. And my last life experience, I've been in philanthropy for the last 20-some years, from philanthropy to direct service, from arts and culture to community development. But interesting, my first major half of my experience, I was learning, working in African American and Hispanic, and even in Jewish community. The last 10 years is my really work in progress and training in Asian community. I must echo to what you said, because 20-some years ago, we rolled out a report with the United Way called Invisible, but in Need. I was on the blueprint committee with Elaine Chau when she was working for the United Way International. That actually has a couple of things didn't change. First, funding to AAPIs in those years was 0.2% from the foundation. And interestingly, after almost 30 years now, our population increased to more than 7% in American population. If you look at the funding from foundation, it is still around 0.2%. Shame on us. I'm excited and also grateful. The recent rise of the Asian American Foundation, they said, if we don't do it ourselves, no one will do it for us. So they pulled together, contribute the money for the Asian American and by the Asian American. And I hope that this will be only the beginning of everybody's talking about we need to work together. So I'm humble and excited to be a part of this whole movement, hoping that together we can turn the needle.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks for your intro. And I wanted to then ask Joel Wong, President of Asian American United for his introduction. Welcome, Joel.
Hi, my name is Joel Wong. I've been with the Asian movement for quite a few years. I'd like to share 2 slides with you. And okay, I want to talk about how to make AAPI votes more effective. Some time ago, there was a movement called 80-20 PAC. We changed our name to National Asian American PAC. The idea is to have a block vote. If we can get 80% of Asian American to vote the same way, then we'll be very powerful, because we're approaching 22 to 24 million people in this country. Mind you, in 1965, when they opened up the immigration to everybody, before there were less than 1 million Asian American. Now we have 22 to 24 million Asian American. We share the same goals, which is immigration, education, and healthcare. But however, we disagree with each other on many fronts. So one of the things that we need to do is to be able to learn to agree to disagree. Look at the main goals of Asian American and forget about the little things, okay? Another things that we need to do is to learn from the Jewish Americans, the African Americans, and other minorities. And we learn from other cultures. So what are the barriers to Asian American unity? Well, we basically haphazardly put together about 50 years ago, and we call ourselves Asian Americans. But the actual reality is that we are from over 20 different countries and dozens of different cultural backgrounds. We have language and we have cultural barriers. And most political campaigns fail to engage Asian American properly. In other words, they don't have the right message for Asian American. That's the problem. And some states are making it very difficult for people to vote, especially in some of the southern states. But however, we find out that once we register, the disparity between Asian American and whites declined substantially. So basically, we need to register more Asian to vote and vote on the common grounds and be able to agree to disagree. So this is what I have for now. I'd be happy to go on with other topics.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for the background. As someone who studied extensively Asian American history, it is good to bring back that the term Asian American as a construct was about 50 years ago. And at the time, 20 countries represented. I'm going to open this up to Joel, Sato, and Anthony. What is your first thought on how to build unity, given that there's such disparate backgrounds and so many communities involved?
Well, we can take a lot of lessons from the data that AAPI data has collected. They survey all the Asian ethnicities and found out that we have 3 very common goals. One is we are most Asian American very heavily invested in education. So that's one thing that we can do. We can work together with. And another is immigration. We have to make sure that America gets the best people from all over the world. That includes Chinese American. Chinese people, right now, there is a China initiative saying that, if you come over from China, you are liable to be a spy. But we educate them, we give them a PhD degree, and then we send them back to China. That doesn't make any sense. And thirdly, is basically healthcare. A lot of Asian, contrary to what people believe, actually, we have a lot of educated people that are doing really well, but a lot of Asian Americans are basically scraping the bottom, especially the recent immigrants from Southeast Asia. And we have to make sure that we coalesce together and make healthcare available to everybody. So those are three goals that we can work together.
All right, thanks, Joel. I'll go over to Sato.
Something I've been thinking about a lot, and it's been also sharing this with some of the Asian community, including Keith, is that one. Can you hear me, or does that sound? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
The thing that I think about a lot is that the percentage that we need to get in order to move this movement for the Asian community forward is that study shows, science shows that you need at least 3.5% of the entire population behind you in order for any movement to happen, for anything to materialize from that movement. We don't even have 1%. And why do I share that? I share that because it's super important for us, because in order to have that 3.5%, we have to look outside of our community, and not just look outside of our community for help when we need help, like right now, right? But to start thinking about it and start contributing beyond our own community to other communities, right? To say, hey, what can I do for you, including the community that is the majority. And I think building those kinds of friendships, having dialogue, like a human empathetic kind of a dialogue to get to know someone, right? You're able to connect with them more empathetically. And when you do that with each other, then when something happens, when you need help, people are more likely to help you. And I think that's what we need to do right now, is like reach out outside of the Asian community, or even some of the Asian community, to help each other. Because I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, I'm trying to do this thing to help amplify the visibility of Asians across all the 4 industries, including business, philanthropy, arts and entertainment. I'm missing something. All those areas is that we need to get outside of our community to do that, not just when we need help. And we need to start doing it now, not tomorrow and over strategizing it. We just need to get out and do it. And until we can do that, it's not going to happen. And we start that by helping each other. The Koreans helping the Chinese helping the Cambodians. And, if you have funds in your nonprofit, help the Chinese community nonprofit or the Korean nonprofit. Because what I'm coming across is that, we're saving it for our people because they need help. But when you're in that mentality of scarcity, of just helping your own community, you can't create this unit of one. And if we can't create that unit of one within our own community, how in the heck are we going to galvanize the rest of the United States to get that 3.5%? So unless we're able to do those things, we're not going to be able to move forward in terms of getting our community out there more visibly.
That is a very important point, because I know that leaders in San Francisco, such as Dennis Hu, and leader in Oakland, Kyle Chan, they are reaching out to the African American, the Hispanic American, because if we support them, chances are we build friendship with them and they will support us. And we have a lot of issues in common, so that I applaud the people, in San Francisco and in Oakland, reaching out to the other minority, especially to the Jewish minorities. We have to work together and we have to learn from each other. So we have to go outside of our Asian circle.
I'd love to add to what Joel shared. I really do. I totally agree with you. And also one thing I'm learning as I go, because, I'm in tech, this is not familiar to me. I'm learning a lot recently. And one of the things that, has been very surprising for me is looking at the stats and the numbers. And to go back to what I shared before, is that in order for us to move forward, we really need to unpack the data that's out there in regards to what constitutes the Asian community in all the different areas, right? Because Joel, as you shared, there's over 20 different kinds of Asian communities here that stack together in one box, right? So I'm looking at some numbers here of the income inequality in the Asian community. And for example, they just average it out. And when they average it out, it's to around $100,000 overall for the Asian community, right? I'm sorry, I've got that wrong. 94,000, about 94,000 for all Asian community. But if you unstack the data, you can see what communities need help and which communities can help. For example, the Burmese American communities, their average income is like 45,000 a year. And then the Indian community, the Indian American communities, it's at 126,000 a year. So if you're looking at data like that and you're seeing that certain communities do well, do better, help the communities that are not doing well within our overall Asian community. And I think it starts there. It's super important for us to unpack the data and not just put everyone in one box to solve the long-term problem.
Thanks, Sato. Before I jump in, I wanted Anthony to have a chance to speak.
Thank you, Keith. My point is, you pointed out very early. We keep using the AAPIs or even many new terms, but most of us don't even know what it consists, and we don't understand each other. So when we don't understand each other, most of the time we second guess, which doesn't go too well for the unity. So I think the first is like, we need to understand what that entire API are comprised of, and from the culture, from the contribution, and from the struggle that everyone, don't let the Hollywood to tell our story. And also Sato just mentioned, don't let certain statistic to describe our need. Rather, it's like, let us understand, because you're right, representation matters. But then, do we have everyone at the table? Because I've been using this for so long. If you're not at the table, you will be on the menu. But we all understand, if you don't participate, if you don't vote, you're not even on the menu. We are invisible. So when we have this, I will say, yes, we have 48 some countries, 100 some different languages. For unity, let's just focus on the common ground rather than the difference, because there will be too much and sidetrack to us. If we find a common ground and work on it, lay down whatever our perception or pre-assumption, so that we are not reactive, we as the passive that we've been. And I would like to have responsive, that kind of initiative rather than reactive. So in a way, some of the things that CLUSA have been doing for the last couple of years and now is still hopping on is try to build a system among AAPI so that we can work together, tell our story. I remember my first lesson in the African American community, my boss, Dr. Stewart, say, Anthony, what good does it do if we only educate our own folks? She's talking about the African American communities. She said, we have to also tell the story so others can understand. And I think I can apply to what a few of you already mentioned. We cannot just work within the AAPI community. We have to learn and understand so that our younger generation, with the hope that they will know and also capable to work with all others in America, so that we can address to each other at the end is fellow American, rather than put any of the ethnic in front of it. But it is a marathon, and we need to start somewhere. And I'm so glad that we all agree on that common ground.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful on our terminology. And I think it's been brought up a couple times. And using terminology, I think we have to have a precision on its definition. Asian American is a terminology that was developed, like it was said.
1967.
Right, and we did that for political leverage. Okay, you still need that political leverage across our diaspora in this country, or else you don't have leverage. Having said that, we should also be aware of what Sato is talking about, to disaggregate our population for the purposes of programming and for the census. Before I left, we changed the designation of people from African Americans and Latinos, and then it was Asians was one. So we broke out others to Asian Americans, and we still have to disaggregate the numbers and the population of Asian Americans in the census, because we use the census for information to develop federal programs that will address the needs of our community. So when we say Asian Americans, we have to be very particular and very precise in its application, understanding that it doesn't work when we talk about programs and social services. That's when you have to disaggregate it. So, we have to be aware of that. So using terminology, but we got to stick together and be one. For what purpose? And if you want one voice on issues, then I think that we have to, use our terminologies in ways that can benefit the diaspora, but also benefit us as a political entity. So, I just want people to understand that precision in the application of our terminology, that when we use it, we better be real clear how we use it, because white folks, they don't care. An Asian's an Asian. A gook's a gook. And we have to be very clear to them and make sure that they are sensitive to the terminology, so that they don't go around, because they stop using the N-word and they stop using other terminology for Mexicans. This in turn, we should be doing this to the psyche of the mainstream America. In our effort to become accepted, we need to also have them accept that, Asians are a varied group, but in political terms, we need the collective votes of everybody, so that we can get the attention that we need to have in the body politic. So I just want us to be very clear on the use and the precision of our terminologies.
Thanks, Mike. And I know we just have a couple minutes left. So what I'll say, kind of summarizing what Sato and Joel and Anthony and Mike have just said, some of us host a weekly room on Clubhouse. It goes 6 hours way into early morning or mid-morning, 3 a.m. sometimes. And we always reset the room. We always actually qualify what we mean by Asians, because Asians from 48 countries and 3 additional territories. And a lot of times, I'm going to give an example. Middle Easterns and Persians are white on a US census, and they're confused because the ones from the older generation are embracing that label, but the younger generation does not feel that they're getting the benefits of being labeled white for census purposes. So this dovetails to what Mike just said. We need to be very precise on what we're saying.
Can I chime in real quick?
Sure,
before you close down?
Yep.
I just want to add on to what Keith just said about precision of word, and what Mike said about that as well. And that's the reason why I started Asians Are Visible, is that the words that we say, the words that we use, they have so much power. Now, I'm sharing this because we are using right now for this movement, and not to offend anyone. I think it served our purpose as a reaction at the beginning. But I really want to ask everyone to really think about the next time you use the word next to your name or the Asian community, of how important it is to use positive words next to your name and the name of your people, the Asian community, because they've done studies on this. Like, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Emoto, Dr. Emoto. He performed this thing where he talked to water, like, you know, water has energy and it crystals. And you say hate, 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 hate to it every single day for 30 days. And in another glass of water, you said love and peace. Do you know what happened to the one that you said hate to? It turned black and the crystals were misshapen and they were not lace-like. The bottle of water that you said love and peace to, it formed beautiful hexagonal crystals. Now your body is made up of mostly water, and this is science. This is like quantum mechanics. It is real, you guys. So I really want you to consider the next time you associate anything with the Asian community, a word that you use for this movement, to reconsider using more positive words for it, because really words, they create a world. So thank you, Keith, for letting me share that.
Sure, Sato, thank you. And we're going to open it up now for Q&A till about 6:08. For about the next 26, 27 minutes, we'll have Q&A. So go ahead and raise your hand or type it in the chat box, and we'd be happy to take your questions. Go ahead, Bing.
Yeah, I was actually trying to echo what Sato and Michael earlier said. How do we formulating our narrative? How do we strengthen our narrative? How we change the narrative to look into Asian as a race? And in California itself, according to Census 2020, white is a minority. Have we ever thought that's why white has been minority for a while? Hispanics has been growing into majority. We still have a strong white supremacists in this country. Look at just Santa Clara County, where we are, the judges, the quantity of judges into percentage, how many Asian first generation immigrant judges are around in our Silicon Valley, and how many are there in California? And also the racial percentage, I'm not so sure if you're aware, the mixed race is the very big increase percentage in this area, especially in the Bay Area. They're 5% in California, more than Jewish population. A lot of them, the mixed race, actually Asian mixed with white. So thinking of unity, how we unite all the different races, including the mixed race generation. People like Tyler, mixed race, half white, half Asian. And so many of them are in that new generation can look into the expansion of racial identity versus the positive narrative racial identity. So that's basically a more comment than question.
Thanks, Bing. One thing I've been talking about, those of you who are close to me and are in the meeting today, one thing that I believe that is going to transcend race, gender, ethnicity, and is going to affect Asians disproportionately is automation. So in the next 5 to 10 years, automation will replace 73 million American jobs. That is a fact. That is, McKinsey and Bain have all reported on that. So if you think about where a lot of assumptions that the Asian community, let's say this, just say the Silicon Valley, San Francisco, over 50% of all professionals are Asian. During COVID, Asians were predominantly or were the majority of the layoffs. So if you think about already the assumption that Asians occupy a huge amount of the labor force, whether they make leadership positions or not, when automation occurs and 80% of all US jobs are automated with only a replacement of 55 to the 73 million, then we should be thinking ahead that Asians will be disproportionately affected by automation as well. I think that is actually my own personal, those who know me, that is my personal passion right now. And I think that's something that we can all rally around. I'm moving into the solutions, but this is just an open Q&A. So that's my thoughts on the subject. Other thoughts?
Let me just comment that most Asians pretty much limited themselves to their own ethnicity. I just want to go around and ask how many of you have, buddies that are uh, that are of another ethnicity. Very few of us, we're basically stovepipe into our own circle of friends, which is not very broad. So we have to make a concerted effort to reach out to the other people that we don't know about, because we are grouped together as a group, whether we like it or not. It's important to distinguish ourselves, because right now, the foreign politics affect the Americans like us, because there is the Indians and the Chinese, they don't get along in other countries. And some of this influence is, flooded to our own communities. And we have to be very careful about separating the issues of American versus foreign issues. Right now, the U.S. and China is not getting along, and whereas Indian American and Chinese American are grouped together as Asian American. So some of this has reflected on our own community, whether we like it or not. So we have to be very careful about that.
Well, can I
Go ahead, Mike.
jump for a second? When you mention the U.S. and China relationship, I think that's where we let our country get away with murder. We should put our government and our State Department's feet to the fire, because most of them don't speak the language that they're supposed to be criticizing and working with. They don't understand the history of those countries, let alone its development and the kinds of political and social barriers that they are dealing with internally, as well as China doesn't understand us as well as they should also. But those of us who are here, we understand racism, we understand discrimination within our country. We should also understand that our government will use terminologies that will put China at a disadvantage in one way, but also exploit them in another way. So let's, as Asian Americans, we have to be really clear what our government's doing in terms of politics, diplomacy, trade, and because eventually it's going to reflect on us as the diaspora. So as a diaspora, we should be speaking up and trying to get some clarity out there, and holding our government's feet to the fire and being more accurate. And when they talk about China, yeah, they've done some bad things, and so have we. We criticize them for human rights violation, so have we. We've gone into war without provocation. Our government should be tried as war criminals, but we haven't. So let's look at ourselves if we're going to look at ourselves honestly, then we as Asian Americans have to speak up and make sure that our government is going to deal with other governments in a balanced way. And we have to look at some of our treaties that we've done with Japan, with the peace treaties. A lot of our hands are tied because we did a peace treaty with Japan, and so we favor Japan more than we favor other countries, because the Japanese knows the peace treaty, but the peace treaty in my mind is outdated. And so we have to we have to analyze ourselves in the context of how we're going to be operating on a global level. And so I just wanted to sort of share that.
Yeah, I cannot agree more than that. I haven't been in the US-China relationship, especially trade investment, for the last 20 years. So I have to say, on the ground, I worked with a lot of US embassies in Asia. On the ground, the field offices, they are pretty fluent, bicultural, bilingual. However, in DC, the orientation is exactly what Mike pointed out. The geopolitics pushed to the extent which is unnecessary, how we look into the impact of US-China relationship to the globe on the global scale, and automation itself can change the narrative of the whole global supply chain. So I think really agree. And I'm trying to, although I do not have solution, how as Asian American here in this country can let our voice heard on those foreign issues. And the foreign policy is never on the ballot in the first place. And I'm curious why there's not enough people to vote on certain policies, how we deal with China, India, or Japan for that matter. And it's never been voiced by any voters per se. And I'm sort of puzzled by that.
Well, this is Sandy. I would say I echoed what Mike have said. Is this it looks like government to government need updated, and then a lot of things is outdated is because we do not upkeep our understanding of each other when different organizations or government evolves. But somehow when we are basically talking about unity about Asian Americans in Asia, and then we're so diverse, I would say a lot of times the unification require a lot of interaction and a lot of understanding among the people to people. Basically is us, once you you do not interact, you cannot create a friendship. You need to create a friendship to create the kind of trust, the kind of understanding, the kind of unification that is required. So therefore, what I agree with Sato has said, if you breathe love continuously among the unifications, continuously, it requires time and effort. So therefore, basically is us, we need to do a lot of outreach. And I think each one, is if we just invest time into our own kind of narrow ethnic area or where the city you're from, and then only communicate among them, we're so isolated in different pockets, and it's not powerful. The power has come to united efforts. So therefore, I think Asian Americans, let's say right now, 23 million of them, and then very quickly in 2 decades, we 40 million. 40 million will make a difference unless we united together. So therefore, I would say it is necessary for us to invest time to befriend with different ethnic group. And then for the small effort I've been doing, I think I've been trying, but the scale is so little, so small. I will say quite significant more people, because reason why is this: when I was heading a education foundation, I exclusively have the Catholic, the Mormon, the Christian, and different and the Buddhists, and then all built school in the Muslim area in China. And when the Boston marathons bombing from Muslim from Kyrgyzstan, I think we have a group of people just went to Kyrgyzstan and spent time over there. I bought a school to be friends with the people who do not understand. I think that kind of understanding, that kind of spreading of love and stuff, instead of spreading hate, is absolutely necessary. I think everybody need to do something to put a foot forward to really have compassion and love to all races. So therefore, basically, what we have to do is very conveniently, I say, hey, it's so easy to talk to people from our own village or my own town that I grew up from, and then all the same background is very easy. But somehow when you have to reach out to something that in the area unknown, I think it should be an effort. So therefore, I think it's us, when we talk about the challenges and then what are the barriers to AAPI unity, I would say there were lots of challenge, but somehow it's us. I think if we actually dedicated, at least we make the first step to actually to consciously to know some other ethnic group among the Asian Americans and try to really listen to them to see what kind of common goal and common understanding we have, and then the like study English as second language, or maintain your own culture, and then how about extended family, and then how about the public safety, and then dealing with old age, and during how to survive in this in the country of what we adopt. So these are the many things that we can share. So I would say not only that we should organize, we should be consciously reach out and befriend. So therefore, I really feel that what Sara mentioned about, if you breathe enough time of love and care, the water will crystallize to be blue diamonds. So therefore, basically, it's just it's a long shot in terms of wish, but I would say just step out and then make your first step. You'll be surprised. I travel to the Muslim countries quite often, and then find out once you express your care and love, the reception is tremendous, because you had to break through some of the barriers, and then once you break through the barrier, you can really feel the acceptance and eagerness to reach out. So therefore, I think it's just it's a collective effort. So therefore, basically, I would say, I would say I was inspired what Mai have said and Saro have said, is that we just need to reach out, and that we should update our understanding.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Bing. I do want to get to the questions being asked in the chat, and I know Sato is going to be able to answer one of them. So go ahead, Sato.
Thank you. This answer is by Piyush. I hope I'm saying your name right. Please correct me if I did not. The question is, what can we do to change the perception and improve the climate for all Asian folks here in the US? The reason why I like to answer this question is the same question that Sandy just addressed. And I want to share something with everyone here. I wasn't intending on sharing this here today, but I think going back to what Sandy shared, Joel, Mike, and Bing, we can all agree that we have all said and shared that in order for the Asian community to catapult forward, to have equality in so many things in this country, is we have to reach out to other communities, right? Create friendships, to talk, to have dialogue, and most importantly, to listen. Now, I'm sharing this with you because I want to start now. I am actually working on a project. It's called the Peace and Visibility Tour. And if you go on the Instagram, Asians Are Visible, you can see I've started posting and giving a little teaser of what I'm about to do. My intention, because I believe so strongly what I shared with you, the power of words. I've set the intention to create this. I'm taking the action to do it. I know it's going to work out. I trust that. And I'm asking all of you to help me make Asians more visible and to create more of a positive image for the Asian community. I'm going to do this with a bike ride across the United States to talk to communities, to university students, to high school students, because they are our future, not just Asian students, but all students, because they're the ones who are going to be controlling the world, and we're going to be leaving that world for them. We need to inspire them by taking action, right? If we don't take action, we're just talking, nothing's going to materialize from that. So I'm asking you for your help to make this possible. And I'm going to go on this bike ride. It's going to be a documentary. We're going to talk to students, universities, high schools, local businesses, local people in small towns and big towns. And people are going to see that Asians are visible and we are not stuck in our little box. We're going on a road trip together to help spread this message of peace and love within our community and to share it with all communities. So I think that's how it starts. So if you want to help in this project, please get in touch with me and let's make it happen. We will share this across all the different platforms because that's how people communicate now, through Instagram, through YouTube, and we're going to make it viral. We're going to get everybody to take part in this and become a part of this story, not just the Asian story, but the American story and the story of people. So thanks for sharing. So long story short, that's my answer to the question of how we change the perceptions of Asians in the US. We get out there, we take action, we do it, we create community, we listen and create dialogue. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sato. Thanks for sharing what your
Great initiative, Sato. If I may say something.
Wait, who's speaking, please?
This is Piyush. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. I was invited by Diana and Keith. You and I connected on Clubhouse as well, so you might remember me from Fremont. So Sato, I really like your initiative here, and I want to say here, as the representing American Society of Engineers of Indian Origin, where I am the president, I would definitely want to support you. And we can, there are communities behind us. And if we collaborate, if we put things together, join hands together, greater things can come. So I'm all for collaboration. So let's connect, and you may be able to get my email address from Diana. She and I just connected, and of course I'm on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. I cannot do this alone. I know this. I need each and every one of you behind me because I cannot do it alone. And I need more people behind me. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Piyush. Thanks, Sato. What I was going to say is because I know we're running short on time, and wrapping in Kiana's question, as much as Asians are getting involved with other ethnic groups, I still feel that Caucasians have no respect to Asians. How can we change that? So I think Sato, her initiative is just one aspect of that, collaborating with other Asian communities such as South Asians, Indians is very powerful. So thank you, Piyush. And then also wrapping in Piyush's second question about think tanks. You know, one thing that we didn't discuss in this forum, we'll probably need to do another one, is when Joel was addressing generations and where groups are congregating amongst their own people. Actually, I find that doesn't happen in Gen Z. I find Gen Z and younger millennials to be very open to collaborating with other people. And I'm a middle Xer, but I'm also very open to collaborating with other people. I think these joint initiatives, think tanks are now pop-up events. They don't necessarily need years of advanced thinking and putting together. I belong to a number of think tanks that were started in the pandemic, very diverse group of investors and impact investors. So Piyush, we can talk about that offline. So just wanting to get through more people's questions. Lucy asked, the chat's moving. Lucy asked, is anyone able to share the term Black Lives Matter translated into other languages that are used in Asia? And just to get this done more quickly, is there an existing list or resource to help educate those in other Asian countries about the movement for Black Lives Matter? And if you know of it and you don't have the time to answer on the forum, just put it in the chat, or we can do it offline, right? So that's the first question. And then the second one, I think, is related to Sato. Can a list of terms Asians are visible also be provided in languages other than English? And Sato, I don't know if anyone's helping you out with that.
You know, I haven't translated it to other languages yet, but if anybody wants to help me, that would be fantastic.
All right. Are there other questions in the last few minutes we have left before I turn this back over to Diana? Joel?
Not right now.
All right.
I would say that I'm looking forward to the day when all ethnicity is dropped and we're just Americans. So that is a goal that we should all work for in the future. I don't want to be known as Chinese American or Asian American. I just want to be known as American. To do that, we have to identify ourselves as American and not, we should be proud of, the country we're from, but not forgetting the culture because what America is about diversity. We each bring a dish to the table, okay? And as a result, America benefit from all the culture we bring to this country. But we have to get through the ethnicity in front of our names.
That's an excellent point, Joel. The moment we can drop the hyphens, that's an important part for our identity. But what's interesting is Andrew Yang actually took that approach and was grilled by the Asian American community for not embracing or not amplifying his identity as being Asian American.
Well, I guess balance is the key word, because when people didn't know about their history, it's like tree without roots. They need to have a deep root in order to know their identity, be able to respect others and understand. I totally agree with Seto about choose to love, be persistent until we are consistent. And in that way, we can build friends and build real allies. Because I always remember, actually, my pastor told us, honesty without kindness is brutality, but kindness without honesty is mere manipulation. And relationship building need to be genuine. And I guess from that, we meeting a lot of allies that they normally get like oversight, or they're not in the mainstream. But if we can build those up that are not always at the table, that they also feel have a seat, and we might be able to see that whole panoramic picture. Yes, it's a long road.
Agreed. Earlier this year, some of my friends know somebody, and I only speak English. I understand 3 Chinese dialects. One of my longtime friends, Caucasian, asked me why I chose China over the US, which was very offensive, only because I identify as being Chinese American. So I only have, I want to once again thank Joel and Anthony and Sato for being on the panel today. I appreciate the chance, Diana, to moderate this esteemed group. And I think the question about making every AAPI vote count definitely starts with education and first building allyship and understanding what that means. And so I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to turn it back over to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you so much for the wonderful job as a moderator. And also thanks to Joe Wong, Anthony A., Sato Wong, and thanks to Mike Honda and Mr. Sandy Chau for your guidance and support. There are so many things we can learn from you and learn from each other. We hope to have you back in the future. And Keith, Sato, and I have been very active on Clubhouse for a few months. So we have our regular events on Clubhouse. I started Asian Americans Network Club in March. We have over 800 members now. So every Tuesday we have room discussing about important issues and also share the stories. So do please follow us on Clubhouse, YouTube, and Instagram. We also would love to collaborate with like-minded organizations, individuals, medias, content creators, social media marketers. So do please contact Dingding TV COO Sandy Wang at sandy@dingdingtv.com, or send me a message at dianadwp@yahoo.com, or just direct message me through Instagram. We would love to work with all of you. So this event is organized by 8x8 Dingding TV and CLUSA. Our partners are United National Asian Americans, Asians Are Visible, and Silicon Valley Insider. I also want to thank AAUC, APAPA, SK Low, Andy Lee, Piyush, Dan, Lily, and many other community leaders for your help. With that, I'm going to hand over the stage to Bing, which is one of the organizer and our moderator for the first panel. Bing, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I'm very grateful for our audience today, and it's a very invigorating conversation. And also very grateful to be meeting everybody here. I was honored actually to be nominated by President Bush for the June month as highlighted community leader by a Republican president, while I'm voted Democrat. So this is basically a message for me to look into unity as a totality of a message, not only unifying our diversity of Asian community, as well as uniting different races in this country as a first generation American. Thanks, Diana, to make this happen. I'm really grateful one of the panels here. Moderator Keith, you've done a really great job and have a lot to learn from you. I want to collaborate you on your radio. I text you on that and connect you on LinkedIn. Mark Honda, I'm always sort of kowtow to you as the godfather for us all and role model for us to learn. And thanks so much, everybody. Glad to meet like Sandy today and Seto today and all the audience. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bing. Thank you so much. And Keith, I think that you should invite Mr. Mike Honda to be on your radio show.
Anytime, any of you, let me know, and happy to have you on.
I think that you should have Sandy Chau on your program, because to talk about the schools that he's developed. He mentioned his travels to different places like Islamic, but in China has all those religions, but there's a lot of wisdom that's going to come out of Sandy's visit in his effort to build schools in China. And then the other guy, Fong La, the new assessor, you ought to bring him on because he's got stuff that people should know about.
I would be honored. I've had Lily May, I've had Fiona. Oh, Fiona's coming on very soon. I mean, definitely would love to have all of you on the show.
Fong La, ask him.
Yes, Fong La is here in the audience. Fong La, would you like to say a few words? I saw you here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now I'll
be. Yes. Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we should get all the speakers, and we have so many great leaders here. So KISS is a really a good channel for our Asian Americans to be in the mainstream, and also we are creating content too. So for the video we recorded today, we're going to post on YouTube and post on Ding Ding TV, and of course share on 8x8 and CLUSA. So any organization or any friend would like to share this content, and please contact me and Sandy, and you can see Sandy's email in the chat. So we would love to collaborate with all of you. With that, I also want to thanks to Hong Yue, who is working hard on Clubhouse, and all the friends and audience on Clubhouse and on YouTube, on Zoom. Thank you all. With that, we are going to take off. And thank you so much for being the speaker, being the audience, being the partner, and being our good friends.
Thanks, Diana. Yeah, thanks for your leadership on
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you.
Bye.
And thank you to our team, Bing, Taylor, Sandy, and Hong. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you, Joe.
Take care.
Thank you, Anthony.
Well, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seto. Thank you, kids.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Xiaoyan. I saw you here. Thank you. Bye.